Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi here in Walterboro, day 18 of the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial. Yes, look, I'm not even going to try to not say Alex. I'm Southern and I wear that badge proudly, so I will call him what I call every other Alex I know, which is Alex. Real quick before we dive in, big thank you to Donna. Two people named someone. Jody, Tressa, and Lacey, Kat, Angie, and Rose for your donations. Appreciate you guys so, so much. And music fact of the day, The Counting Crows, one of my favorites, and Adam Duritz, the lead singer. He was one of the first artists to ever use social media for publicity. So in the very, very early days of the internet, back when it was AOL Messenger or message boards, he hopped on board and was active on AOL message boards, as well as one of the first to join Twitter. And so he quickly accumulated over 1 million followers, and that's been credited to helping the band's success. I love the Counting Crows. They're so good. Great live too, by the way. All right, so let's dive in. Oh boy, what a day. I feel like that the state had some wins and I felt like the defense had some wins. And then, so first thing this morning, there was this motion to keep out the roadside shooting. The state wanted to bring it in. The defense did not. And so Harpootlian essentially said this was not some stage set up roadside shooting, that he was meant to survive. He wanted to be dead. Creighton Waters says, look, this is a consciousness of guilt. It should come in. Ultimately, Judge Newman said it was not evidence of motive in the murders, and it's more for like a common scheme or plan. And so he said he actually called it a bridge too far and said, we're not bringing that in. So we get started with our witness, who is David Owen, the lead investigator for SLED. So on the day of the murders, Special Agent David Owen, I might add, I'm sorry, to try to do their titles, if I can catch them. So he got a call at 10:30 p.m. to respond to Moselle. They were requesting the assistance of SLED. So in that case, SLED comes in, assists them, but they're not the lead agency. They're just there to help. He got there around midnight and located the requesting agency, got the scoop of what they knew so far, and then his supervisor was also there on scene. So he was paired with a Colleton County officer, and he walked outside of the scene. He kind of walked outside of that crime tape, and he finds out who's been interviewed, all the usual stuff. The bodies at that point were still covered with a sheet. He saw evidence placards, and crime scene had not arrived yet, so he just did not cross that line into the scene. He stayed behind that tape. And so his supervisor eventually came to him and said, we're going to be leading this. So that's how Mr. Owen became the lead investigator. He met Alec, and there was no other place to interview him but his car. I would have said downtown, but anyways, he put his body cam on his visor to record. He did not have a camera in his car. Danny Henderson was also in the car. That's a partner from the firm, ex-partner from the firm of Alex. And his demeanor, didn't notice any alcohol or drug indications. He seemed distraught, but ultimately he was able to talk. He said there was nothing off about Alex's clothes or shoes. And so after that interview, which we've seen, which is inside the car right there after the murders, he wanted to get Alex's clothes. And so as he's telling them this, Alex gets a call that Buster was there. So the investigator gave him 10 or 15 minutes to just get with Buster. And he was just, it seemed to me he was being very respectful of the situation at the time. So after about 10 to 15 minutes, he went to the house, and he said there were multiple people inside. Maybe, I think he said there was like 10 people or something like that inside. And so he told Alec, I need your clothes. So he stood in the doorway while Alec changed his clothes. And so he dropped the clothes into the brown paper bags. So they bring out Alec's shoes, and he talks about the condition of those shoes that night that they got them. It was damp because of the rain and the humidity. There were no stains observed on those shoes. The t-shirt and shorts they brought out today as evidence, and they packaged the clothes in separate bags to prevent cross contamination. So that was kind of it. He did mention that as Mr. Ellick changed his pants, he turned around to give him some privacy. So thank goodness for that. A couple of jurors, I'm going to tell you, they kind of look worn out at this point. I think it's starting to wear on some people. He said the shorts seemed clean. So the prosecutor asked in that first interview, towards the end, you reach over and console him. And so the witness says he was upset. It's who I am, just to touch him and kind of be a comfort. So at the house, he just got the clothes, made general observations that there didn't seem to be a sign of a struggle or forced entry. There were partners from the firm and family there. I'm sorry. He said 8 to 10 people, his estimate, was inside that house, which is insanity. It should have been emptied out and searched. But Alex said he tried to call Paul's friends, and he wanted to get Nolan Tootin to interview. Nolan was at the house, so he interviewed him. And at this point, Sled begins processing the bodies and the crime scene itself. So in the Suburban, in the early morning, once the scene was clear, and they secured that car and sent it to the Colleton County Sheriff's Office for processing. So Paul's phone, once the sheet was taken off, they see it on the top of his pocket. Alex said he tried to check for a pulse and tried to turn him over, and the phone popped out. I've never had a phone pop out of my back pocket, y'all, but apparently that happened. He thought he should put it down. He said he thought about doing something with it, but thought he should put it down. So usually the phone immediately is put in airplane mode when they retrieve a victim's phone or a suspect phone, I guess. But the battery was dead. He explains they also pull out that SIM card so that nobody can go remotely in and erase anything. And that SIM card really is what holds all your information anyway. So he stayed on the scene all night. Then at 7, CB Rowe arrived and they interviewed him. Alex said CB was off that day to take his dad to the doctor. The coroner took possession of the bodies, and he said around the bodies, it was gruesome, bloody. Paul's was worse because he was found on concrete and Maggie was in dirt, so there wasn't as much blood around her. The dog caretaker also showed up. The guy that was on there yesterday, who I love, who loves his recliner, right? They met back in Walterboro to have a briefing. This is Sled. They started assigning tasks like canvassing the neighborhood. There weren't many homes close to the road. As you know, these all sit probably a half mile off the road or a quarter of a mile off the road. There wasn't a whole lot of cameras. They did get some camera footage, but it was so dark they couldn't make out a model, maker model, or a license plate of anything that passed. Rogan Gibson told this investigator that, and this is before they have the kennel video, he said he heard Alec in the background of the call when he had called Paul earlier, right before the murders. So then Sled goes back and talks to people inside the house, and consent was given, as we know, to search that house. June 8th, they found the blackout shell casings at the shooting house. So it was the morning of the murders, or after. Yeah, 7th, then the 8th is the morning after. So on June 9th, 2 days after the murders, they spoke to John Marvin Murdaugh and said they needed a proper interview. They just sometimes want to wait a day or two to give people a chance to calm down, people that discover these bodies, that call 911, just to clear their mind a little bit, get away from that shock. So the second interview was Alec, and then Jim Griffin was in the car, who currently represents him in court. And there was another officer, and this was voluntary. His mind seemed clear, of course. This was at 1:54 p.m. Alex said he had not gone back to the kennels that night, which is a big thing. I mean, I think that really is one of the bigger discrepancies that he's going to have to overcome in this case with these jurors, because how are you going to back out of that when you repeatedly said you weren't at the kennels? But now not only have we had somebody say they heard you on a phone call, we have video. And everybody who knows you has said, that's him. They asked for his consent to do a phone extraction, and that was done while he was being interviewed. So remember, let's see, June 10th, they were already working with the 14th Circuit Solicitor's Office. Ironically, the one that his family held for so long. They talked to Marion Proctor and her husband, who just yesterday testified, that's Maggie's sister and brother-in-law. And they got a search warrant to search ponds and bodies of water on the Moselle property with the Sled dive team. And they also had land searches. Swampy areas were searched as well. They talked about searching Maggie's car, which you got a wedding band under the seat. I'm just curious. But yeah. June 16th, dive team comes to search more water areas. Alex said that Maggie was in Charleston to see a doctor that day. So he gave a name, and SLED verified that she was there. She was in the same clothes she was found dead in later that night. This was a normal visit, and she did not seem to be in distress. They talked to Alec a few times over the next few weeks. And so on July 28th, Alec wanted his Suburban back, and the agent said it was inoperable at that moment. And so he asked to get his personal belongings. I think this said the day before July 28th. I don't know why I have that there, but 27th, 28th, he wanted his car back. Alec had questions that he wanted to ask, and the agent had questions for him. So he was told to call when he got back from vacation. That was the time where he went to Key West with Maggie's sister and her brother-in-law. So Alex said he couldn't the next day because he was leaving. So on August 3rd or 4th, Alec calls and they make plans to meet up. So he wasn't familiar with this particular investigator, wasn't familiar with the family, but knew about the boat crash. So he got buckle swabs from the boat crash victims and their alibis. He mentions Alec talked about the boat case in that 911 call, and also, almost immediately to arriving officers. So on August 11th, we watched this video interview with SLED at the regional office right here in Walterboro, probably a 3-minute drive from the courthouse, from what I was told. And so at this point, the jury, honestly, y'all, looking a little bored. I have my notes here. And so they interviewed him at 11:09 a.m. It was voluntary. Although I think there's a time discrepancy. I think Ann Jeanette tweeted out that they said it was not 11:09, but it actually was like 9 in the morning that they interviewed him. Corey Fleming was also there with Alec, and Alex said he wanted to ask questions about where the investigation was. A little small talk in the beginning, but Corey Fleming kind of hops in and says, maybe I'm mistaken. I thought we were here to update him. Let's do that first. And the agent said, well, we need to ask questions. Alex says, totally understandable. And Corey Fleming says, I'm a friend, but I'm also a lawyer. Are you asking him questions to further your investigation, or do you think he's a suspect? And the agent smartly says to further the investigation. Corey Fleming says, I'm not comfortable with you asking questions if he's a suspect. I thought you were going to update him. So the agent says, any homicide, we start with those closest to the victims. And if you're comfortable, I'm okay. And Alex said, anything to help. So the agent asked what time he got to the office and who was at your house when you left. He said he got to his office between 8:30 and 9:30. He said, if you need exact times, my keypad will tell you when I went into my office, which is interesting. I don't know if all the attorneys there have keypads. He said he could open it with a card, but he said Maggie had gotten up early because she had an appointment in Charleston. He said, I don't remember if I left before she did, which is interesting because Maggie, I thought she was in Edisto. I didn't think she stayed at Moselle the night before. So I thought that was a little weird, unless my brain's just gone crazy, which is slightly possible. Let's not lie. It's majorly possible. This brain is so scrambled. So Paul's dead and you're a lawyer. You know what's going on. And Alec mentions the civil case. So Alex said he got home around 5:30, which is early for him. He can't remember when Paul got there, maybe right before or right after. And the agent asks about him riding on that property with Paul. And he asks if he saw if they had any guns. And he said they went shooting maybe with a pistol. I think they were shooting like a bottle really quickly. It wasn't super long that they were there. And at this point in the interview, he's crying. And they looked at the sunflowers and he said they just rode around. He talks about Paul's feet swelling. His blood pressure went up. They were worried about him. And he said that on that ride, they talked about everything. Paul was hesitant to see a doctor, but less so after his feet started swelling. And they were worried about stress from the boat crash. So they were watching him closely just in general. And Maggie got there a couple of hours after they both arrived, he and Paul. And at this point, he's doing sobbing. And he said, Maggie was worried about me. He said he just had found out that she had been worried about him. And she was also worried about his dad. So she headed home from Edisto. He said we were having work done there. And she let him know earlier in the day that she was coming home. He said they all ate, talked. Her appointment went good, I think. She had been having a couple of issues, nothing huge. But after dinner, they went to the kennels, right? And Alex said, I don't know. I stayed on the couch, dozed off, got up, the TV was on. So they show Alec the Snapchat video from Paul's phone in the khaki pants and the blue shirt. And the agent said, when I met you that night, you had on a t-shirt and shorts. And so then he said, when did you change your clothes? And Alex said, I'm not sure. What time was that video? And the agent said close to 8 o'clock. And so Alex says, I guess when I got back to the house. Now, one thing in this interview I noticed is that he's kind of fishing for where they are in their investigation. One shooter, two shooters. Do you have any idea? Do you find any DNA? That kind of thing. And I think that's telling because maybe he's wanting to see what they know and what they're willing to share with him, which could help him formulate his answers around that. So the agent said, you texted Maggie and called. Did you check Maggie before leaving, meaning at the kennels? And he said, no. So the agent said, well, why not go check? There's no answer. She was going with you, right? And Alex said, I don't know. She didn't normally go. We didn't have plans for her to ride with me, which is odd because the whole point, according to Maggie, was that Alec called and said, my dad's sick. At this point, Mr. Randolph is terminal. And she agreed to come back home. So the agent asks which route he took to his parents' house. And so he recites all that. And then Alec explains his mom was overly agitated with the death of his dad. She wasn't aware he had passed, but with him not being there. And so he was checking on her more after his dad passed away. So Alec in this interview says he was at his mom's for 45 minutes to an hour at this point. Shelley Smith had already been interviewed. So that was one thing that this lead investigator knew is that his timeline is way off, right? Because now it's 15 to 20 minutes is what Michelle said. It was 30 to 40 minutes, I believe. It got smaller as the interviews went on, that time frame there. Earlier, you were at the kennels with Paul. Did you discuss any injuries to a dog? And Alec explains it's Rogan's dog, and he and Paul did not specifically talk about what was wrong with the dog, but he did with Rogan. Paul did talk with Rogan about the dog. And the agent said back to Moselle, he came in the brick gates. He doesn't know how Maggie and Paul got to the house because the cars were, or got to the kennels because the cars were at the house. And the agent said all he can think of is that black truck, wondered maybe if Maggie walked. But then Alex said Paul probably didn't walk with Maggie. He would have made her just ride with him. In other words, Paul wasn't going to walk to those kennels. So he said, Paul and I knocked around at the shop, the shed, the kennels after supper, before dinner. And so the agent specifically asks, you didn't go back down there? Alex says, no. So the agent says, I have information that you and Maggie and Paul were in this background. And so Rogan asked if it was so. Essentially, he tells Alec that Rogan has recognized his voice on the phone earlier with Paul before the murders. Any chance he was mistaken? And Alex said no. So the agent said, the 911 calls, you say here like you're talking to someone else. And Alex says, I'm saying here. And the agent said, dispatch asks about guns. You move around and you say here. Alex says, I don't remember that. I'd have to listen to it. He said, there wasn't a dog out though. So Alex said, people have told me things about the 911 call that I don't remember, and I'm certain there weren't any dogs loose. So I don't remember saying anything about that. The agent talks about the 911 call. You go to the house to get the shotgun, and Alex said he went to the side door and went through the side door and then the gun cabinet. The agent asks, how do you normally load your shotgun? Do you put in different types of ammunition? Because Paul was shot with buckshot and birdshot. Alex says, I put it in the chamber and pull the trigger. He said, I loaded buckshot. I load buckshot, birdshot, slugs. And the agent said, would you load them together? And Alex said, not normally. He said, I load depending on what I'm hunting. And the agent said, one shot to Paul was bird and buckshot, like the shotgun you had on the pool table, the same with the gun we took, the same ammo. So Alex said, I know what's missing from our guns. It's 3 guns. He lists them. They're all shotguns. It's a Benelli shotgun, a Browning shotgun, which was camo, a pump shotgun, which was camo. And that Benelli, by the way, was a black shotgun. So the agent talks about alerting like the ATF if it's stolen, he can do that. He says, I understand a 300 blackout was used that night. And he mentions the three that he now knows that they had purchased. One was lost. And John confirmed that he sold Maggie that third gun. If you remember, when they got Paul that replacement, Maggie was the one that went and paid for it and all that jazz. But the problem was, Alec did not sign the ATF papers. And so they talk about the cartridge casings found by your house and also at the shooting range, match the ones near Maggie's body. Man, he said it's a concern. He said the ones near Maggie's match the ones on your property. So he said, Alex said, I'd asked Buster about the missing gun. He thought it was gone before Christmas, but Nolan said it was missing on Halloween in 2018. So this is way before the murders. And Nolan just explained they obviously were at a Halloween party with a ton of people. Paul left it in the truck. When they go inside, it's there. When they come back out, it's gone. The agent brings up, on the 911 call, you said I should have known. You said nobody was supposed to be at the house. What did you mean? And Alex said, one time Paul did that. He had two. He asks about whether or not there have been any physical altercations. He said one time Paul did that. He had too much to drink at Moselle and he wasn't listening to me. So it sounds like he admitted that at least he and Paul had some kind of a physical altercation at one point. So Paul's cell phone, the agent said when it popped out, you said you knew better. Like I was going to do something with it, but I knew better. And he put it back. And Alex said when I went up to him, his phone came out. Never heard it, y'all. Alex said it takes about 20 minutes to eat dinner for them all together. And he said Paul always has guns. Unusual for him not to have a gun. The agent talks about Paul dropping his truck off and didn't get anything out. If you remember, Paul had dropped that truck off for some maintenance. And then they went and looked to see if he was seen getting anything out of the truck. He did not. In fact, I think they found a couple of guns still in that truck. This was the Friday before the murders, by the way. Alec isn't sure where the truck Paul drove Friday was parked. And Alec was going to stay at the hospital with his dad, but he doesn't think that he saw Paul that Friday. On that Saturday, they were in Columbia for that baseball tournament for the Gamecocks, and Paul wasn't into ball as much as he was, and so he went to Charleston instead. So the agent's trying to understand this timeline. He said, you can't remember these times. So at 5 o'clock, you leave work, and you told 911 you last saw Paul an hour and a half to 2 hours ago. And he points out the 911 call was at 10:06. Alex says, tell me again what I said to dispatch. And the agent said, you saw them an hour and a half to 2 hours ago. And so he asked, what time was that? This is Alex. He said, 1.5 to 2 hours would have been 8. That's about right. And at this point, they did not, by the way, have the kennel video. So the agent says the video at the firm shows you going in at 5:30. And Randy said when he left at 6, you were still there. Alex said, I left earlier than I normally did. I try to get home before dark. I don't think I was there at 6, but if I was, it wasn't for long. You can get the information off the Suburban to download. I mean, and I think part of that is just to be like, yeah, go ahead and get what you need. I got nothing to hide. It's hard to tell because he's a lawyer. He knows what's up. He used to be a prosecutor. He knows exactly what you don't say when you're under criminal investigation. But he said, I got home with enough time to ride around for a substantial amount of time with Paul. We rode all over. The agent asked, what questions do you have? And Alex said, I'd like to know exactly what happened. And the agent said, me too. So the agent said that he believed that Paul was shot first. So Alex crying. Alex said, I thought Maggie was first because she was shot in the back of the head, which I thought was a really bizarre statement. And the agent said if Paul saw mom get shot, he would run to the feed room. And the agent said that there were family guns used in these murders. And is it normal for y'all to leave guns in cars? But whoever did this didn't drive the truck to the house and leave the keys in the car. Alex says, do you know the guns were in the truck? He said Alex said he was told Nolan saw the Blackout 300. The agent said Nolan didn't see the 300 since March after turkey season. He didn't see it past then. Alec asked, did y'all get forensics? The agent lists all people whose DNA was found at the scene. Then Alec asked, did they live after being shot the first time? And the agent said the shootings probably happened quickly. Then Alec asked, did they suffer? And the agent said, I think he said no. It was hard to hear. And so Alec asked, how many people do you think? 1, 2, or 3? And so the agent says it's hard to say because there were 2 guns and different types of ammunition. And so the agent said, I'm not going to ask the family or the law firm to see what information they can find out. He said, I can't stop Randy from trying to get information, but I would not ask him to. So the agent said there's no fingerprints, no footwear impressions. He mentioned that it had rained. And he said, all we can do at this point is look at the cell tower dumps. And the agent said they took the electronics, and the FBI said there's information there and they're waiting on OnStar. Alex said, I don't own the car, but we can get whatever paperwork's needed to sign. I believe that car belonged to the law firm, by the way. Corey Fleming asking if they have Paul's cell. So the agent said, we've checked the iCloud, nothing from Paul's, waiting on Maggie's. Corey Fleming says, if we get a representative for us to authorize it getting open, he said, I can get that to probate. He said, there's lawyers all around, and the agent says, y'all can start working on that. So Corey Fleming asked, have you tracked down internet stuff? And the agent said, some of it's outrageous. Some of the rumors online was that Maggie had left Alec and was moving to Florida. Mom was dead and she was going to be with her dad, and just all these things that just simply weren't true. So Corey Fleming says, why tell the bad guy what you got? And Alex said, did one know the other one was dead? And he was crying. Alex crying, and he says, you're certain Paul was first. And the agent said, if I were looking at 2 shooters, it could have been at the same time. So he just doesn't know. So Alex says, are you willing to talk to Maggie's mom, dad, and sister? And Alec thanks him and says, I know you guys are doing what you can. So the agent says the media keeps throwing you in there in the mix of these murders. He said, if I can get evidence to exonerate you, Alex said, when you get my car stuff, that'll help. My question is this, and this is one thing I've always wondered. If Paul was getting threats or felt the least bit unsafe, why wasn't Moselle covered in cameras? Because if people were threatening my life, I would definitely have cameras everywhere. Just random thoughts that shoot out, y'all. So Alex said we talked about getting cameras. He thought there had been some theft on the property. There were some drills and tools missing. Kind of insinuated it was since CB was hired. But a guy named Matt was working there as well, and Alec needed someone to keep things from getting out of control on the farm and to help. And he said that was late fall when they were working there. They talk about the replacement gun. He's asked, did it have a scope? And he said, no, Paul put something on it. We know that they got that red dot sight that him and his friend put on there, right there outside the gun room on that rail, obviously going down some stairs. So after lunch, we continued the video. And so Alex talking about, we looked for the gun, talked about it on Christmas, that kind of thing. Then they move over to the boat crash talk. And Corey Fleming says, I know nothing about that case. His lawyer needs to be here if you're going to talk to him about that. Alex said his partners are helping with that, and it's making some progress, but it's not in the initial stages, but not there yet. Very familiar, if you remember, kind of what he said to Tony Satterfield. I really didn't understand this, but Alec jumps to, all I know is one of the dads or brothers of one of the kids in the boat crash went to links to, couldn't understand him. They didn't have the volume up loud, but it said, like, you can't be friends with the Murdaughs and us. You have to choose. And it was a he said, she said. Alex said, well, somebody told me that heard it from somebody. It's down the line. So you know how that goes. At one point, Alec kind of hollers for Buster while he's in there, and he goes outside, and they fast forward the video to where I guess there's a little 10-minute break or something. So the agent shows Alex something on the laptop and shows him the snap video. Alec went to great lengths to get the tree to stand up, is what he said. He said he went to great lengths, and remember, it just kind of fell over, and he says, there it was, isn't it? Or something like that. So the agent asked, was this the night of the murders? And Alex says, I'm not sure. Red flag. I think you would know everything you did right before your son's murdered that you rode around with. What you know, alibis, you know I've been traveling weekly to cover the Alex Murdaugh murder trial, and I hate packing. And even more, I hate loading and unloading a bunch of bags when I get back to Walterboro. The Weekender bag from Base has cut down the number of bags I need to take and has all the things I need, like a laptop sleeve and even a key leash. Base was created by actress Shay Mitchell to make sleek and affordable bags, luggage, and accessories designed to help you travel effortlessly while still looking fashionable. Base has thought of everything you could ever want in a piece of luggage. 360-degree gliding wheels, a cushioned handle, built-in weight indicator, washable bags for your dirty clothes, and all the interior pockets you need to keep organized. Their luggage comes in multiple sizes and colors, and for shorter trips, the Weekender bag is super functional and even has a place to store your shoes separately. Every piece is made to look better with miles, so you don't have to worry about it in cargo or overhead. And Base has over 30,000 five-star reviews. Whether you're packing for a quick trip or looking to breeze through the security line, Base has your personal items covered. Right now, Base is offering my listeners 15% off your first purchase by visiting basetravel.com/whattheworld. Go to basetravel.com/whattheworld for 15% off your first purchase. That's Base, BEIS travel.com/whattheworld. And now it's time for a word for our sponsor of the week, Lomi by Pila. Look, I've never been able to compost before. It's always too complicated, too much work, and it's too stinky. Then I got a Lomi. Lomi allows me to turn my food scraps into dirt with the push of a button. It's a countertop electric composter that turns scraps into dirt in under 4 hours. There's no smell when it runs, and it's really quiet. Thanks to Lomi, I have way less garbage each week, down from 4 bags to 2, by the way, and I feel great knowing I'm composting and creating soil instead of waste. I've basically a limitless supply of dirt for my garden. So what can you put in Lomi? Food leftovers, fruits and vegetables, eggs and eggshells, grains, coffee grounds, yard trimmings, houseplants, and more. If you want to start making a positive environmental impact or just make cleanup after dinner that much easier, Lomi is perfect for you. Head to lomi.com/whattheworld and use the promo code WhatTheWorld to get your $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to lomi.com/whattheworld and use promo code WhatTheWorld at checkout. Food waste is gross. Let Lomi save you a cold trip out to the garbage can. The agent says, hey, if you have any questions, call me. It says they'll call Miriam to talk to, which is, as we know, Maggie's sister. So then the agent just goes right in. Did you kill Maggie? No. Did I kill my wife? No. Do you know who did? Alex says no. Did you kill Paul? Alex says no. He's asked, do you know who did? No. Do you think I killed Maggie and Paul? Does that mean I'm a suspect? And the agent flat out says, you're still in this. Nobody else's DNA is found. These are family guns, we think. At this point, the video stops. August 11th, that's when this video took place, or this interview. Was he a suspect? He said he was the only known suspect. And around that time, this was transferred to the Attorney General's office. At this point, the prosecution points out they had talked to Shelley about that timeline, and she said 20 minutes or so that he was at the house, as we know. And he said the inconsistencies with that timeline were repeated over time. So June 7th through August 11th, he had talked to Alec around 5 or 6 times on the phone as well. So inconsistencies that stood out to this agent, the timeline for moms. The first time that he was interviewed, he said he was there for a little while. Then on June 10th, it changed to 25 to 30 minutes. The third interview, this last one, 45 minutes to an hour. And then the time spent with Paul riding around, it was like 45 minutes to an hour the first time. The second time he mentions it, it goes from an hour and a half to 2 hours. And Rogan heard Alec in the background when Alex said he wasn't at the kennel. And he never said he went after dinner. He brought up the boat case and the 911 call back in February. You know, the boat crash was in February of 2019, where beautiful Mallory Beach lost her life, unfortunately. And bless her heart, I can't imagine what her mama and her daddy feel. So August of 2021, they dismissed the charges against Paul because he was dead. So in fall of 2021, these financial investigations began because of the murder investigation. And the agent said the investigations fed off of each other. So August 21st through summer of 2022, he worked primarily on this case. And there were a lot of search warrants that were still outstanding. So on the phones, June 8th, it was found on the side of Moselle Road. Alec gave the password. They did a full extraction. So Alec's phone, the extraction was June the 10th. That was not a full one, by the way. The agent got the phone back in September. They tried to get more information, but some of it was overwritten. But they did get some information, and they knew that those phone calls were erased. It was an insane amount of phone calls erased. As far as Paul's phone, the cell phone popped out. He said he picked it up and thought of doing something with it, but he knew better. Or March of 2022, sorry, they found the kennel video that was taken at 8:44 p.m. Until April 8th of 2022, nobody knew that video was on the phone except for Paul. They did their full extraction of Paul's phone in March of 2022. They found the kennel video on April 8th of 2022. The agent said nobody knew that video was on the phone except for Paul up until April of 2022. And he said the information gathered through last week, actually, with General Motors was information from that Suburban. We know that that's might come in. He said there were just never any other credible leads other than Alex. So on cross, now I'm going to tell you guys right now, say what you will about these guys representing Alex, Jim Griffin, Dick Harpootlian. This cross exam was something to be seen. I'm not siding with anybody. I'm going to tell you, I want to hear the defense's side before I sit here and say, I think he did it. I think he didn't. I have my own personal opinions. Y'all know I try to keep most of them out of here. This cross exam was so effective that everybody in the courtroom was just and I'm going to tell you, the jurors, this was the most engaged all day long. They were by far, they were into this. So on cross, defense says, you talked about the investigative circle. They had mentioned in that video, Alec was in the investigative circle. So the defense says, yeah, he was kind of in the middle of that circle since the 911 call. And the witness says, yes. So over the last 2 years, you've been unable to get him out of that circle. He ends up sitting here where he is today. The agent, yes. The defense says SLED failed to make immediate steps to preserve evidence to exclude Alec from that circle. And the agent says, he disagrees. He said, I don't think we made mistakes. All right. So whoever murdered them would have had blood or biological materials on them. And he says, yes. The defense says Alex said he left Moselle between 9 and 9:10 to check on his mom. So at 8:50 to 9:06, you dispose of the weapon. You drive to see mom. And they searched the residence the next day, talking about the Moselle residence. And the agent says, yes, no murder weapons found at the house or on the property. No. Was a search from Moselle to his mom's house done? And he said it was driven several times. And then the defense says, hey, was there waterways searched that were on the way? And he said he knew several were. The defense says Alec didn't stop from Moselle to Alameda. And the witness says correct. Defense, you never searched Alameda for guns, clothes, until well after June 7th. And the agent says that's correct. If I had probable cause, I would have. But then the defense says, wasn't Alec giving you consent pretty much to search everything? So he says, if a search of Alameda and the route he took was done swiftly, you could have excluded Alec. And so the defense says the night of the murders, Colleton County deputies noticed 300 blackout. The agent said they told me, but I wanted to verify that myself. The defense says Rogan talked to this agent early that Monday morning on the 8th and said he had identified a voice earlier in the evening. Oh, he said he was 99% that voice was Alex. So what are you looking for searching Moselle? The agent says guns, ammo, what's missing, what's there. And so the defense says, why was the agent looking in the drain? And the agent says, I don't know. You'll have to ask her. So the defense says nobody went to his mom's house to look for gun or clothes. That was an opportunity you missed. And the agent said yes. So the defense says weapons. A 12 gauge would have biological material and an assault rifle would have gunshot residue on it after these murders. And the agent agreed. So the defense says you looked in the car. No blood in the back of the car. Nope. Any gunshot residue? Yeah, they had that one speck on the seatbelt buckle. And the agent says yes. One drop of blood on the steering wheel from Maggie, and that Suburban never went back to the kennel. No gunshot residue in the car other than that. He said, talking about putting the guns in the car if he had done these murders, and the agent said, unless it's wrapped in something. And the agent says, like what? And the agent says, a blue raincoat. And the defense says, you found a tarp on his mom's property? And he said, yeah, on the second floor. Oh, showed a picture of the jacket to Shelley to see if it was a similar color. And so the defense says, when? And the agent says, last month is when they showed this picture of this raincoat to Shelley, who was the one who saw him with it. You showed it to family as well. And the agent says, yes, to see if it was belonging to Maggie, Alec, Buster, or Paul. Shelley, the defense says that she saw the tarp on the rocking chair. And the agent said Shelley said it was tarp-like. So the defense says when she saw a photo, it was laid out on the chair, but when he came in, it was balled up in his arms. The witness says, well, we wanted to see if the color was the same to her. And so the defense says, did you show a picture of the raincoat to her all balled up and not just laid out? And the agent says, I don't know. I know I showed it laid open. So the defense says the raincoat had no blood. Witness says no. And he says, if Alex's shotgun is balled up after killing Paul, you'd expect to find DNA on that. And the agent says, yes. The defense says you would agree they didn't have DNA. So he didn't ball up the shotgun in that. And the agent said, you believe there'd be blood or DNA on the shotgun, but I can't say for sure. So the defense says, any wet spots in the Suburban? Nope. The defense says, if he cleaned up after the murders, wouldn't you expect to find more trace evidence in the house? And the agent says, yes, but there was no trace evidence found in the house. The defense says, was there blood on the carpet or anywhere else in the house? No. The defense says, you got a Snapchat video, Alex in a blue shirt and khakis. When did you get that? He said he got that in early July, I'm assuming of 2021. They play the video and they freeze the Snapchat video that shows the outfit. And he says, is this the same video you shared with him? And the agent says, yes. So the defense says, you asked when he changed in the interview and he doesn't remember. He said, I agree on August 11th. You confronted him. Did you kill them? And he asks if he's a suspect. You said where the evidence leads us. And the defense says at that point, he was your only suspect. And the agent says, yes. So the defense says you talked to Blanca after the August interview. And after that, you confronted Alec. He questioned Blanca about what he was wearing that day. Remember, he goes to Blanca and says, you know, if they, well, according to Shelley, he was told to say he was there 30 to 40 minutes. According to Blanca, he was told to tell anybody who asked he had on a different shirt. But Alec questioned Blanca about what he was wearing that day, and the agent said yes. Alec gave you consent for you to search whatever, and he says yes. Then the defense says Alec reached out to get people to talk, and he provided you what you asked for. Yes. The defense says prior to August 11th, you never asked for the blue shirt, and he said no. Never asked to see the shirt, never asked for Alec to produce the shirt. The defense says your investigation was on the clothes he had on when he called 911. So then he said you engaged an expert about high velocity spatter after it was sprayed with LCV. And the agent says yes. So the defense points out the shirt's now purple, and the agent says yes. And the defense points out also it's from treating it with the chemical that turns it purple. So the defense says before you testified before the grand jury, you found a narrative, and you said the expert found multiple high velocity spatter on his shirt. And he said yes. The defense says SLED, out of 74 cuttings on the shirt, 0 came up positive. The agent said, I didn't see that report until November of 2022. The defense points out well after the indictment and just months before the trial, and he says yes. So the defense says on the interview tape, you told him no unknown DNA from the crime scene was found. He asked, did you know about this unknown male DNA under his fingernail under Maggie's fingernail at that point? The witness says, I was told it was one allele cell, not enough for DNA testing. And the defense asked, did you hear about 3? And the agent said, I heard 1. So the defense says, what was tested for DNA? And the agent said he did not have a report in front of him. So they also point out, the defense points out that Paul and Maggie's clothes were not tested for any DNA evidence. And also Mr. Bevel, who did that blood spatter analysis on that t-shirt, the guy they hired that SLED hired from Oklahoma, he asked to see if there's blood inside Paul's pocket or the outside of Paul's pocket. Was that done? He said no. So that's what I don't understand. I mean, people talk about the cell phone popping out. If Alec reached in there, could you not leave some trace DNA? I thought there was blood inside that pocket, right on the lip, too. Well, I'll have mercy. His clothes and the DNA, according to the agent, wasn't their only evidence. But the defense says it would be okay to say he wasn't wearing these clothes when Paul was killed. And he said, essentially, yeah, I mean, he probably wasn't. So the defense says we found 2 spots with Paul's DNA. And then the defense points out to the grand jury, you found spatter belonging to Alec, Maggie, and Paul. Was that accurate? The agent said, now that I have the hemotrace report, now I know no blood was found. So the defense says on June 8, you get the clothes. You wanted to get it then, but Buster was coming, so you gave him time before he had to change. You stood in the door when he changed. He dropped them in a bag and put on different clothes. Do you remember that? What did he put on? And the agent said, no, maybe gym shorts. And the defense says, can you be sure it wasn't khaki pants? So the agent said, I can't say what he was wearing at that time after he changed. The defense said, did anyone take khaki pants from the house? The agent said, not that I know of. Defense, you say it rained that night. Would rain come off the roof onto Paul's body? And there's concrete pads, so it's kind of washing down and puddles up. Alec told you June to August to keep him updated, and he said yes. The defense says he requested you talk to Maggie's parents, and the agent said we were going to talk to Maggie's parents even if he didn't ask us to. Then the defense talks about the reward offered by Alec and Buster, and the agent said yes, it had an expiration date, and he thought the firm was also involved in funding that reward. So the defense talks about the shotgun shells found in the feed room, the buckshot, and the small pellets. So if you're a lead investigator, you think it's turkey load, and it wasn't. The defense says Agent Croft got involved because of his knowledge of guns and ammo, and the witness said yes. So the defense, you didn't find any weapons with buck and birdshot? No, I didn't. So at this point, I mean, the jury is back. This I have on my notes. It's like a tennis match, back, forth, back, forth. Nobody was bored. Nobody was sleepy. But the defense brought up, you told Alec there were multiple weapons with buck and birdshot. Was that investigative tools or was it the truth? And he said it was investigative tools and I'm allowed. So essentially, the defense points out you lied to him. And then the defense says you said under oath to the grand jury the same thing. Were you trying to trick the grand jury? And the witness said no, the guns had different loads in the shotgun. He said, I may have said buck and birdshot. So what does the defense do? They pull out the grand jury testimony. And the defense reads, were all of them loaded like that? And the agent said loaded in a similar fashion. So the defense reads buckshot and turkey load. And the agent said yes. So that's the end of that little transcript from the grand jury. And the defense asked the witness, was that correct? And he says no. And so the defense says people can be wrong. And the agent says yes. And then the defense says people can be mistaken about timeframes too. And the witness says yes. But he points out the inconsistencies that Alec was talking about kept changing. They talk about the big discrepancy seems to be the time that Alec said he was at his mom's. And that witness said, yeah, 30, 40 minutes. That's a pretty big discrepancy. And then the defense says he left at 9:06, called 911 at 10:06. He's gone almost an hour. And the agent said he was gone an hour. I asked, how long were you at your mom's? The defense says, is your belief they were murdered between 8:50 and 9:06? Does it matter if he's at his mom for 30 or 45 minutes? Is that even relevant at that point? And the agent said, if I'm trying to establish a timeline, yes, it is. The defense says, do you think he's hiding evidence? And GPS shows he went there and back. The witness says, but it shows him way in the backyard there at his mom's house. So the defense says, we know from phone records from 9/22 arrival, we know exactly how long he was there. So the defense start talking about the fall 2021 financial investigation overlapped and fed off each other. Remember the agent had said that earlier. He said they're both involved. He said, I'm looking in totality. at both of these things just as one bigger picture. Defense attorney said you excluded everyone. He also said CB lied to you. He told you one thing and came to you and admitted it. He did not want Alec to know he was looking for another job that day, that he wasn't working. So the defense says you learned Alex spent $50,000 a week on drugs from cousin Eddie, who is buying from the Sandhill drug gang. And I guess maybe that's the Cowboys. I don't know. So, okay, y'all, remember at the beginning of the episode, I said that they did not want the roadside shooting to come in. Just pretend like you're hearing the door creak open because they just opened it, right? So you learned Alec spent $50,000 a week on drugs from cousin Eddie, who's buying from the Sandhill drug gang, the Cowboys. Eddie owed them money, and the agent said they came to us. They knew they'd get paid, so they weren't worried about it. They did also, the agency did an analysis around Moselle to see if anyone else came onto that property using cell phone records, and they didn't find anything. So the defense says, did you take DNA from the drug dealers? He says, no. The drug investigation is still ongoing. So the defense, did the pathologist tell you about a bruise on Maggie's calf? And the witness says she didn't feel someone intentionally stood on her leg. So the defense says, were there any dusting for prints in the feed room? And the witness says, I don't know. I wasn't there. The defense mentions DNA swabs. Curtis Eddie Smith, have you got one on him? He said it was obtained, not related to this case, but it has been cross-checked. So the defense says, how is the lead agent left out about a negative hemotrace result? So the agent goes on to explain that they have email notifications when a test result is ready or a report is ready. He said, I saw the report existed, and he said he searched his email and it wasn't there. And after that, the defense says you changed your focus to the Snapchat video. And the agent said, August 11th, I asked about that because I had the video. Defense says you never asked for the clothes in the Snapchat video. Agent says no. The defense says, did you look into the Sandhills gang? Possibly, I guess, as being suspects. No. So the defense, were the blackout cartridges near Maggie matched? You were told forensically they couldn't say 100% unless the missing gun was recovered. And the witness said that's correct. So on redirect, all the shell casings had been in the same gun. That was what was testified to. The agent says yes. So talking about the day of the murders, the prosecution says, did you say, tell me what happened? He said, well, we talked to him, but on June 10th, I wanted more details. On August 11th, he gave more information and got more information from Alec. State says, did Alec say, let me get you the shirt? And the witness says no. So prosecutor says, Blanca says it's a sea foam green shirt when he left. That Snapchat shirt was a blue Columbia style shirt. Remember, it was a polo style shirt that was sea foam. Sea foam and tart blue are totally different, by the way. Sea foam is that was all the rage a few years ago, that color. So did Alec ever mention a potential suspect like Eddie Smith? The witness says no. Prosecutor, when did he bring Eddie Smith into this? And the agent said September 4th of 2021. He got a cell phone from Randy and he was worried. So the agent responded to this roadside shooting. Alec was transported to a hospital in Savannah. And so two agents went to interview Alec. They have Agent Kelly stand up. He's in the way back of the courtroom. He was one of the agents that interviewed him in the hospital. So Alec said someone shot him. And when asked, did he identify them? He said no. There was a description, and then a SLED forensic artist came in and did a sketch. The state says during that time, did he mention any names for suspects of Maggie and Paul or somebody he thought might be someone they need to talk to? He said no. So the state, did he tell SLED eventually he was lying? And the agent said yes. It was an objection that was sustained. He said, I don't think Alec ever gave cousin Eddie a name. We found it during our investigation. The state says after the roadside incident, that's when he brought in other people. The agent said yes. So the state says in search of the crime scene, was it secure? Yes. Were swabs taken? Answer was yes. In the back of the car, was there a cooler? Can you put wet clothes in a cooler? Yes. Was there blood on the steering wheel? Yes. Whose was it? Maggie's. Blood on the shotgun? Yes. Alec and Maggie. Now, I don't know that they ever said blood. They said it was a reddish brown stain. I thought they testified that wasn't blood. I'll have to go back. The state says consistent or inconsistent with the gun that killed Paul. And the witness said the firearms examiner couldn't include or exclude it. So it's just an unknown. They also say there were contradictions between what Alex said and what Shelley and Blanca said. Shelley being the caregiver, Miss Libby, Blanca being the housekeeper, mainly for Miss Maggie. Yes, there were contradictions between Alex's story and theirs. The state, would it matter time-wise if you're hiding guns? You know, how long would it take you to hide a gun? The witness says, 5 minutes. So they'd go on to this cooler that was seen in the processing room. It was pointed out by CB Rowe to investigators. They saw it Monday and Tuesday. Then the agent is asked, did you see it again? And he doesn't recall. So then the state says, does the rain jacket repel water? A few snickers in the courtroom, few laughs. The agent's like, yeah, I'd say so. The state says gunshot residue on rain jacket on the inside. And he says, yes, that was a lot. So the state, when did Shelley tell you I saw him with this coat? And the agent said it was the day after Randolph's funeral. So the state says your testimony to the grand jury, did you give the summary of the case, the timeline discrepancies, the financial crimes, the background? Yes. The state says blackout casings were consistent. The family had 3 blackout rifles, and the agent says yes. Shelley Smith saying he did. They were talking about the discrepancy with the time. Alex said he didn't go to the kennels after dinner. Yes. And then he goes through the evidence presented to the grand jury to get these indictments, by the way. Alec apparently told investigators he was surprised that Maggie came that night. He didn't indicate he asked her, which that was what we know is that Maggie told her sister that Alec had asked her to come and that Paul was going to be there. So the scene was very bloody. They saw no evidence whatsoever that Alec tried to move Paul's body. So the state said, did Alec say go search my mom's house? And he said no. He never mentioned anyone else that could be a suspect in the murders. No. So recross, here we go again. Is it police procedure that suspects solve the crime? And he says no. So the defense, you're asked a lot of what ifs. How long to hide a gun? You said 5 to 10 minutes. How long to search his mom's house? The agent said he wasn't a main suspect at that time and he didn't have probable cause to go. But then the defense says the firearm guy can't exclude or include the gun. He says that's correct. That was the end of that testimony. So I'm going to tell you, I sit right where there is a common aisle. And so I'm in the second set of seats, usually on that second row. If you're looking at the courtroom on the right side, second row, if you see Joe McCullough with the gray hair, with the fabulous gray hair, I'm usually kind of like right beside him, behind him. This witness, I think, really was a little rattled after giving this testimony. He walked out of the courtroom and the prosecutor was right behind him. So the last witness was somebody who did forensics on the phones about battery health and usage or battery habits. So he said Paul flew a little too close to the sun with his phone. Sometimes he would wait till it's 1 or 2% to plug in before he lost battery. So him losing his battery that night wasn't, or being low on battery was not essentially out of the realm of possibility, apparently, for Paul. They go through the times about Paul's battery, and I'm not really sure why, but they list the times that it in the days leading up to the murders when he plugged it in when it had run out. I just don't get it. So I didn't write that down, y'all. I'm sorry. But the one thing that he did say was that Maggie's phone, due to the software it had on the phone, if it had been tossed, it would not have had an orientation change because the software she had on her phone would not have allowed it. It was, I guess, a lower version of software. So that was one thing that was debunked, because if you kind of remember, the one thing that was sort of alluded to is maybe as Alec is going to his mom's, he just opens the window and tosses the phone out. It was like 15 feet off the road, though. And then there was this whole back and forth between the witness and one of the attorneys about, it was Harpootlian, I think. He was like, even on a good day, could you throw it 15 feet? You know, it's just one of those back and forths. But what happened at the end of the day, y'all? Oh my goodness. So I kind of think this is strategery. I call it strategery. It's strategic. Judge Newman, after the jury leaves, tells everybody to be seated, and we're like, oh boy, what's up? So he says the defense opened the door to cousin Eddie and his relationship with Alec. So testimony can now be heard on that. He said, I'm reversing my earlier decision from this morning, and I'm going to allow the roadside shooting to come in. So I think that is the defense sort of pushing buttons with the prosecution to force their hand, or is the defense opening the door for them to call him? It's really, really hard to know. But I know he's been on the state's witness list and they haven't called him, and they're supposed to finish up in the morning. So now, will we see cousin Eddie tomorrow morning? Maybe, because now you got jurors that are really confused if they truly don't know about the case and don't know cousin Eddie's part in this, which is he had a big part. We don't know. We know that Harpootlian really wanted some stuff that we know is not admissible in court, which is the failed lie detector test to come in. But yeah, so I don't know. Is it strategic on the defense's part? Let me know what you think, because they argued this morning they didn't want it in. And then at the end of the day, they just go right for it. They go right into it. And it's just, and I did see a couple of jurors who were kind of like, not really following what was being said. So do you force hands to bring him in? I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, I'm going to get this uploaded. I apologize about last night's video, y'all. It was a repost because somehow my ads overlapped, and that's really annoying. So I reposted it on the podcast version and I reposted it on YouTube, and it's taken a long time to get these uploaded in this hotel. One of my amazing friends gave me this. She's here local. I got to go out to dinner with her and her daughter tomorrow. And but even that, I can't get a signal. I think there's like steel in these walls. So I'm tethering from my phone, and it's a big pain in the rumpus. It takes hours to upload to YouTube. So I'm really sorry these are getting out almost in the middle of the night. But you know, it's what happens when you got hotel Wi-Fi and like a bunch of reporters staying here. Everybody's on their computer. Anyways, Lord, y'all, let's see what tomorrow brings. I'm gonna get some rest. I'm getting in bed early tonight. I'm ready for tomorrow. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. Let's let the state finish up, and let's see what the defense brings. And let's see if cousin Eddie is going to roll up in the driveway. All right, guys, we'll see you soon.